Well, happy Monday. Hope it's a good Monday for you and the start of a very good work week for you. Maybe a better week. I think about the last week. Oh, by the way, come on in. Spend a few moments with me in my little world. Past week's been kind of a challenging week in a lot of ways. A lot of things going on. Think about the response to the election that took place in the United States and all the things going on with that. And I know it'll settle down in time. Of course, the continuing of the viral pandemic around us and news everywhere about that, and always the challenge and the worry and arguments that go on about that. And then in our area, there was the ice storm that took out the electricity several days ago. Actually, at our house, we went right at 14 days. 14 days. Of course, we were among the fortunate ones. We did have the opportunity to run a generator and have power in our house, but you just think about the things that went on. And I think about how these things have affected us. Because a tendency in times like that is to get pretty selfish. You know what I mean? We think about ourselves. We think about how it's affecting us. We think about the, the effects of an election and how it's going to come into our lives. We worry about the effects of a pandemic and how that's going to deal with us and what we have to do in our lives. And then something like an ice storm blows in, and all we can think about is, I'm the one that's without power. Well, I guess that's kind of normal, if you want to call it that. Kind of natural in a way. But then I think about how these things can be an opportunity for a little more self-evaluation and growth towards better outreach. Somewhere along the line, somebody pointed out the scripture in Acts chapter 10. As Peter shares a message in the household of that centurion Cornelius, and he speaks about Jesus. And in the 38th verse of Acts chapter 10, he said, who went about doing good. Much later, the Apostle Paul would say, we ought to do good to all people, especially those who have like belief, the household of faith. I go back to 1983, I believe it was. 1983, the rains had come heavy and Cottonwood Creek overflowed as it did on a fairly common basis. It overflowed and it divided the town of Guthrie, Oklahoma. We lived on the west side, and so the east side was separated from us. It's hard to get around in the town. Ultimately, the waters went down, leaving their mud and mess all over. And what you find in the lower parts of Guthrie in that time were a lot of people who were not affluent, and their houses were filled with water and mud and all the things that would wash down the creek. Churches and groups brought in things, and we set up an opportunity to give things away. Ultimately, a bunch of college students came up to town. We put them to work going into people's houses, moving things, changing things, and appreciated those young people. They had a vitality, and they kind of made the day of it. We fed them a little bit, and that's about it. But the thing that struck me as much as anything, not to take away from anything that anybody else did, was while out one day during the cleanup, a white van rolled down the street, and a group of men, not young men necessarily, a group of men of a variety of ages, some of them with gray hair, dressed in overalls, and they got out and they began to go door to door. I found out that they were Mennonite men. They were brought into town, they came into town, and they just went door to door and began to ask, what can I do here? Before long, you could see them. They were in houses, mopping mud out, washing things out, carrying logs, cutting branches and trees that were in the way, just whatever needed to be done. And there they were, and they would work all day long. When they were done, they thanked the people, and they walked away. Just going about doing good. They didn't stop to ask people about their belief system. They didn't try to say, well, we're going to help this one or that one and not help that one. They just went from door to door and they began to work. And when they were done, the good deed a blessing was given to somebody, and that was enough. I think about that sometimes. And I think about how selective we are in those who we want to help. I know we are responsible for ourselves and we need to take care of ourselves as best we can. But sometimes we need a little bit of help. And isn't it nice when somebody doesn't stop and measure whether we're worthy of the help, whether we believe the same thing they do, whether we're of the same color they are? Those things just kind of go out the window and we forget all about that for a moment and we just do something good. I think about how many people Jesus healed, how many people he touched, how many people he preached to, how many people's lives were affected. And Peter simply summed it up by saying he went about doing good. What an epitaph. Wouldn't it be great to have that on your tombstone? Here lies your name there, who went about doing good. Oh yes, there's a time to correct misunderstandings, to change things, to preach a specific doctrine or idea. There's an important time to debate it inside and out, to prove the truths of something that you hold to be dear and true, and when it comes to the Bible, especially so. But isn't it great when we can just go about doing good? Here we start a new day. Here we start a new week. And what an opportunity to say, I think this week I'm just going to find some things that I can do and do some good. I think it'd be well worth our time, don't you? Let's give it some thought. Let's consider what we can do. Glad to be with you today. I hope it's something that blesses your life. Maybe you're the one needing some help. Maybe you're the one who can help. Whatever the situation, let's make it a good day. Hey, we'll share some more things as we get a little further down the road. Glad to be with you today, and thanks for being with me.